We are live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast. To be exact, I'm Hudson.
I'm Ryan.
And before we get into episode number 19 of season 2, I got to let you, the people, know about a few quick things. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And if you like today's video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you want to be the first to know when Revved Up 906 is posting to our YouTube channel, hit that bell button on our YouTube profile. If you aren't so much into long form content, our videos are usually around 30 to 40 minutes long. If you aren't real great at sitting down and watching these types of videos, make sure to still subscribe and follow us on Instagram, because almost each and every day we are posting content and clips or reels that are around 25 to 40 seconds long. So make sure to still subscribe so that you can see kind of the highlights of each and every episode. Also, Grind Clothing Co. is our official merch sponsor, and you can find merch like the polo I'm wearing, like the hat Ryan is wearing. If you click the link in our YouTube bio or in the description below, that'll shoot you to Grind Clothing Co.'s website, where you can check out a plethora of merch designs. So make sure to rep your favorite Detroit Pistons podcast. Also, make sure to check out Grind Clothing Co. on Instagram and give them a follow, because you can check out all the different designs they have, designs for everybody's different style, tastes, and everything. So also from local athletes to personalized designs from the creator himself. Without further ado, let's get into episode number 19. And you know what, guys? I am pretty excited for this topic because, as you guys know, we've been getting a little bit more into opinionated topics. And so we're going to try to use stats to kind of curate this topic, but then also we'll probably get a little fired up on this way because I got some fun questions. But today's topic is Cade Cunningham or Paolo Banchero. And the reason I thought of this topic was, right now, the Orlando Magic are sitting fourth in the Eastern Conference. Paolo Banchero was all-star for the Eastern Conference. And just a few short years ago, the Orlando Magic were right in the same boat of the Detroit Pistons. In 2020, we were both sitting at the bottom of the East. And we're like, when are these two teams going to figure it out? They were just kind of sitting at the bottom of the East. Well, the Orlando Magic are slowly starting to figure it out through the draft, and Paolo Banchero is slowly starting to rise as this premier player. And we all know that beloved Cade Cunningham is kind of finding his way post-injury with this new roster and lots of trades going on with the Detroit Pistons, and they're just not at where we would have hoped back in 2020. So I really want to start off this conversation with the stat comparison, because when you break down this season's stats, Cade Cunningham is basically match what Paolo Banchero does, but Cade wasn't an all-star. We're going to get into that mainly because of the standings and so on. But right now, Cade Cunningham is averaging 22 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists. And then Paolo Banchero for the Orlando Magic is averaging 22 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. So we see that Cade Cunningham's got the edge in assists, Paolo Banchero in rebounds. Ryan, when kind of opening this conversation, if Cade was on the Magic roster, would he have been an all-star? Because is it simply standings and team play, or do the NBA really just disrespect Cade Cunningham that much? Where's your head at as far as why is Paolo an all-star and not Cade Cunningham?
Well, to me, you look at it, right? Paolo Banchero was a highly touted player coming out of high school, highly touted player coming out of college, top pick in the NBA. He's one of those guys that has been very popular from the beginning. I mean, Cade has too, don't get me wrong. But Paolo, I would say, has been probably a little bit more favorited between the two of them within the last couple of years. Because even when you go back to Cade in college, yeah, he was talked about all the time at Oklahoma State there. But outside of that, like, they kind of like bashed him a little bit, and they were really questioning him as to if he
Right.
would really work out at the next level or not. And if he is the number one overall pick, which he was, who is he going to land with? Is he going to excel with that team? It was really more questioning his abilities than what they've done with Paolo Banchero. It's kind of like they just feel like Paolo is going to be that guy right away, no issues. But to me, when you go back on this question of so why wasn't Cade an all-star this year? If he was on the Magic, would he be an all-star? I think if he was on the Magic, he would be an all-star. But at the same time, you look at it and you look at the voting goes, a lot of the voting, and this is no disrespect because we're fans, but fans in the league are they don't care about stats. They don't care about which player is actually performing at the better level. Because I'm going to throw this out there. The fact that you have Austin Reeves in the West receiving votes, like, how is that possible right now? Like, I can name a handful, like a laundry list of different guys that are far superior than Austin Reeves. Cade being one of them. But granted, that's the West now because they did switch it to East versus West once again. But still, the point is, it's very fan controlled, which it should be because the fans do deserve to watch what they want to watch. But with that being said, when the Pistons are as bad as they are, and even it doesn't even matter if it was the Pistons, it could be any team in the league. Whoever the bad team is, even their best player, who is better than a lot of the best players in the league, if the team's bad, that player is not getting voted for. That's always what's going to happen. I think Cade should have been an all-star this year, but I can understand why he wasn't. And if he was on the Magic, he should have been an all-star, but I could also still understand if he wasn't, just because it's very fan orientated on who gets in and who gets out, because there's been multiple years and multiple different guys that have been missed in the all-star game with appearances in that regard that should have been an all-star. And so I think this question could go either way, but at the end of the day, it really depends on the fans.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with the sentiment of the popularity race almost, because when you look at film and you look at highlights of Paolo and then Cade, what's full of Paolo's highlights? It's full of dunks, it's full of these fadeaway jumpers, it's these like he's kind of like a built-in highlight reel. And then you look at Cade's highlights, and they're these savvy passes, these quick three-pointers in a guy's face, these difficult shots. And so it just kind of caters to two different audiences. If you are a true basketball fan and you just are in the truest form, love the game of basketball, you're going to be a Cade fan because he plays the game right. He plays it the way old school players did, like Grant Hill, Magic Johnson, these types. So for me, I just don't think Cade caters to the overall NBA fan base as much. I think people know he's talented. They know that when the Detroit Pistons are going to Brooklyn to play against the Nets, the Nets fans know that Cade's going to go at the Nets neck. They just know that's the way it's going to be. But I think more fans are more excited if the Orlando Magic come to town. They know they're going to get a look at Paolo Banchero because they're hoping for that big poster. They're hoping for those crazy fast break dunks. And I think that's another reason why maybe he got the edge in the All-Star game, just because it's all about popularity. It's all about views. It's all about selling the ads. It's all about the NBA trying to make as much money as they can. The players come back to it all the time. It's a business. So it's frustrating because people like us that are diehard Pistons fans and that are kind of deep in the NBA itself is just like watching very closely. We know how dangerous Cade is, how skilled he is, and how deserving he is of one. And it's just hard when you see a guy like Paolo Banchero that I just don't really know if he's kind of earned his way yet in the NBA to have that type of respect. I'm not quite sure. I mean, Paolo, I just don't think he's held in high regard from fellow veterans like a Cade Cunningham is. There's guys like Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, Paul George, all saying on their podcast, like, holy crap, this Cade Cunningham's legit. Okay, well, it's just two different kind of cups of tea, in my opinion. And unfortunately, I think in the popularity contest, Paolo Banchero has just got the upper edge. So when talking about this Cade Cunningham or Paolo Banchero, a big question that's going to come up is who makes the bigger impact on their teams? And right away, Cade Cunningham jumps out to me just because he's the whole focal point of the Detroit Pistons offense. Whether it's scoring or whether it's passing, it doesn't matter. Cade Cunningham is involved. Where Paolo Banchero, I think he has a little bit easy on the Orlando Magic. He's got the two tough big men in the paint. He's got a plethora of guards to get him the ball at all times, whether it's bench or starters. They got Cole Anthony, they got Jalen Suggs, they got Markelle Fultz. The list goes on that just know how to get him the ball. And I think that, I mean, Cade makes such a big impact on the Detroit Pistons. If you take Cade away from the Pistons, it easily could be a worse situation than they're already in this season. So, Ryan, when talking about who makes a bigger impact, how do you kind of highlight that?
Well, obviously, Cade is the number one option on the Pistons. He is the guy. He is the face of the franchise. Go to the Orlando Magic there. You could argue Paulo is the same. But you could also make a case for Franz Wagner.
Yeah.
Just because like he can easily go out there and give you 20 any night. That's how good he is. And I really believe that, and this is a bold take. I know it is, but I don't care. I really think in terms of career arc wise, Paulo Banchero is on the pretty much the same career arc as Dwight Howard. Just because you go back to Dwight's early years in Orlando, everybody's like, "Holy crap, this kid is legit. He's a stud." And they don't win anything, and that was a talented team that he left. Hedo Turkoglu, and then even Jameer Nelson. They had a lot of quality, good players on that team, and he leaves, goes to the Lakers, and then falls off a cliff. Not saying that Paulo is going to fall off a cliff, but the way things have gone with him in the past, I can see him leaving if they don't win. And this team in Orlando is almost pretty much built for success as is. So I was just throwing that out there. But I really think if take Paulo Banchero away, I think the Magic are still as good as they are right now.
Me
because
too.
Franz Wagner is that good. Cade Cunningham, you take him away from the Pistons, yeah, there will be a slight disadvantage there. It will the talent will cut off significantly. But you look back at last year, I mean, we pretty much went the whole season without Cade Cunningham. He played 12 games for us. After those 12 games, we got a lot of wins, and it was a lot more than this year, which is saying a lot. But you look at that roster, realistically, Jaden Ivey became more of a point guard. Jalen Duren had a big year. And then even the role players of Isaiah Stewart, who's turning into a role player now, but at that point in time, a quality starter. And you go down the list. All those guys improved without Cade, and it actually benefited them. But I really think if you take Cade away, the Pistons fall. If you take Paolo Banchero away, the Magic still win. They are just that deep of a team. When you have Gary Harris, who can pretty much be a sixth man for any team in the league, coming off your bench as the eighth, ninth guy, that's saying a lot. And I know I really just said Gary Harris is a sixth man, but he kind of is. He does fit that role. But again, if you take Banchero away from the Magic, I really do think they're going to win still. You throw Banchero, heck, you throw Banchero with the Pistons. I don't think it'd be that much of a difference as to where they are now. And that's not me throwing shade at Cade. I just, based off stats this year alone, they are almost identical. So if you flip-flop the two players, I don't think anything changes.
Nope.
But I really think if you take Banchero away from the Pistons, if you were to flip-flop them, I think the Pistons would still be in the same situation. And that's just because Banchero just, to me, he has a little bit more of that selfishness in his game than what Cade has. But yeah, to answer your question, I really think if you take away Cade, the Pistons fall. Take away Banchero, they still win.
Right. No, I completely agree. And when you look at the Orlando Magic and their kind of play style, Franz Wagner is so active offensively that he is the one always kind of setting up Paolo, and Paolo's got an easy job. He just kind of waits for a guy to find him. Where when you flipped it to the Pistons and Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey doesn't really have like that partner yet in crime. We were kind of hoping it was Jaden Ivey, but he hasn't necessarily proven it's going to be him yet. And so it's just kind of Cade Cunningham on an island at times, just kind of trying to make ends meet offensively, where Paolo is constantly getting fed by his teammates. And there's a guy like Franz Wagner that is right next to him, so active, so moving around constantly, just kind of putting defenses in kind of a confused state, that it sets up Paolo for these easy jumpers, these, rush to the rack and try to get those buckets in the paint. And I just think that that's why Cade Cunningham makes the biggest impact on the Pistons, because I agree. I think if you take Paolo off the Orlando Magic, I still think they're going to be a successful team. Fourth in the East, I don't know. You could always argue that maybe not, but I still think they're in the playoff race and trying to chase that first spot, just because they got such good continuity right now with the Magic. And if you take Cade away, what do the Pistons have? Jalen Duren. Well, I love Jalen Duren, but I think we all know that he's not going to be the guy that leads an offense to Eastern Conference championships. I just don't think he's that kind of guy. And Cade, I think, has the potential with the right guys next to him to be able to do that for an offense. So let's kind of talk about who's more of a leader now, because they're both not super vocal. They're both a little kind of chill guys, but behind the scenes, I think Cade Cunningham has the upper edge on being a leader behind the scenes, because I think he's really found his voice. Paolo doesn't seem to me like a guy that's like really in it. I don't know. Like, he just doesn't seem like he's the kind of guy to rally a team, when they're down 12 and they're on the bench during a timeout, and that just really seems like to fire these guys up. It just doesn't seem like that to me. I really think Cade's got the upper hand. What are some of your thoughts on like who makes the biggest impact as a leader? Because for me, that's a big thing about who's biggest and baddest player.
Well, you go back to Duke with Paolo there. Paolo was, you knew he was the leader on that team. He was the go-to guy. Granted, he's the best player on that team, but everybody listened to him. He would control the offense, and he would control the defense. Cade also did that at Oklahoma State. But then you go fast forward to now. I don't think Paolo Banchero is really the guy that's leading the Magic right now. I think it's Franz Wagner. And if it's not Franz Wagner, I really think you could make a case for like a Cole Anthony or a Jalen Suggs. And that's not me saying, oh, Paolo Banchero is the worst player out of those three. I just think when you break it down in terms of leadership, those guys are leaders. Go back to Gonzaga. Jalen Suggs was the leader on that team.
Oh yeah.
And Cole Anthony, leader on his team. And then you fast forward to now, I think they still are leading that team. Jalen Suggs is a very hard-nosed defender. And defensively, he by far is most doubtedly probably the leader on that team. But yeah, you go back now, you go to the Pistons and this side of the thing. I think Cade is the leader on the team. But Cade, once again, like Paolo, and then even me, like myself, introverts, they don't really talk a whole lot. But when they do talk, people listen. And that's kind of like how those two guys are with their teams. Isaiah Stewart will be one of those guys that calls you out. Jaden Ivey is one of those guys that talks to you. Jalen Duren is going to call you out from time to time. Cade, whenever he talks, you listen. That's the bottom line. I don't think it really necessarily matters if you talk a whole lot. I think if the players around you respect you enough, they'll listen. And I think everybody in that locker room for the Pistons respects Cade enough to listen. And you go back to I forget which game it was, but it was recently, and you had Monty pretty much go down the line and say, like, tell each player individually while everybody's there, what they can do to work on their game to get better at halftime. And Cade literally like ripped everyone a new one and pretty much chewed them out. And then they went back out there, won that game. But the point is, like, everybody in the locker room knows that Cade is the guy. I don't know. Granted, we don't follow the Magic closely. So who's to say if Paolo does that or not? But I just have a feeling that Paolo is not necessarily the leader in that locker room. I think it is a Franz Wagner or a Jalen Suggs or even a Cole Anthony. I don't think it's Paolo. But I don't know because we don't really follow the Magic closely enough to know. But what I will say is everybody listens to Cade when he talks, and it's evident.
I think for me, Cade has really proven himself as a captain this last year, because I know when he was injured, we were really worried about where's Cade at. He wasn't really traveling with the team. You didn't see him in the practice facility as much. And then by the end of his rookie year, we were kind of like, I wish he was a little bit more vocal and communicated more. And it was kind of like a worrisome thing for us for a good bit there of, okay, is Cade going to step up, even though he's young, step up as this captain of the team? But because I think at times he kind of just let Stewart do his thing, let Duran do his thing, and as these big vocal guys. But this last year, I think Cade's really proven that he is turning into this captain, like your example of him, you know, kind of barking at the guys during halftime and kind of being like, hey guys, you got to step up in these areas. And then when Cade came out after the New York Knicks game, after the refs totally bewildered the Pistons, and he went to the podium and he really called out the NBA and was really pointed with his words. And I think that's kind of proving that, hey guys, I'm the captain. I'm going to stick up for my boys. I'm going to back up Monty Williams and his comments. And I think it's just really him kind of firming himself as this captain. And I just don't think Paolo Banchero really does that at times. And maybe he will one day. I just think that Cade's just such a proven leader that he doesn't have to be this super vocal guy to make an impact with his teammates. Before we wrap up episode number 19, I don't want people to think this, the question I'm asking, but just for the sake of conversation, and now that we're kind of focusing on Cade Cunningham, with Paolo Banchero getting the All-Star game and getting that nod and kind of getting like pushed by the NBA as like one of the future bright-eyed guy that hopefully is going to be one of the golden childs, like a Jason Tatum right now. Does that ever make you think? Because sometimes I get a little questionable, like, is Cade underperforming at times just because that's where we wanted him at and he's just not there yet? Or is it truly just a popularity race? Like, where's your head at as far as the Pistons are struggling this year? The Orlando Magic have made this big leap with the offensive leadership of Apollo Banchero getting that nod to the All-Star game. Does it ever make you think like, where are the Pistons at? Are they this bad? Have they not figured it out? Is Cade underperforming? Where's your head at as far as I know? There's a lot there, but just kind of unpack that before we wrap up episode number 19.
To me, I think it is a popularity contest. And it goes back to one of our most recent episodes where I pretty much was like, the Knicks win that game because of popularity. They win that game because the NBA wants to promote their products. And then even in this situation, that is the case still. Historically speaking, if you go back to the Bad Boys, going to work Pistons, and then now, none of those teams were ever respected. And none of those guys, and there's a list of Hall of Famers right there alone. You have Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Chauncey Billups, Ben Wallace, etc. And you even go to the Pistons now. Now, I'm not saying like our team right now is like a laundry list of future Hall of Famers, but we have a lot of super uber talented guys on our roster. And Cade is by far one of the more talented point guards in the league because he's not just a point guard. He's like Magic Johnson. Because Magic could play 1, 2, 3, and 4. Cade, I'm not saying he can play the 4, obviously not, but he can at least play 1 through 3. There's not one spot that he's like, yep, that's his position. It really, in the NBA today, it's positionless basketball. So with that being said, I really think it does come down to popularity and just the fact that you have the Magic where they are right now, fourth in the East. They have a good roster. They're taking a step up, and Paolo Banchero is having a good, improved second year in this league, where you go back to his rookie year and had 20 points a game, and then fast forward to now 22. So he's always been at that high point level. And he's known for dunking. He was known for dunking at Duke. I think the NBA, no matter what it is, I don't think Cade is necessarily going to get the nod of respect. I think he's going to be one of those guys that by the end of the day, when you go down at the very end of his career, or even when he's out of the league, and you're sitting there going through all these stats, going like, wow, how wasn't Cade Cunningham like a multiple time All-Star? Like, you look at the stats, those are incredible. And then you look at other players during that time, and Paolo Banchero gets thrown up, and you're like, oh, well, that's weird. He has almost identical stats, and yet everybody talks about Cade as if he was actually that good. And so it's going to be one of those conversations down the road in the future, just because people, bad boys, going to work Pistons, even now, we will never get the respect we deserve. And so because of that alone, I don't see Cade getting a nod anytime soon, especially if we are this bad. If we start winning, it might change, but until then, I don't think so.
Yeah, I do think the standings are a huge part of that. You know, we saw when the Atlanta Hawks back in like 2013, 2012 went on that huge run, and they were just dominating the East. And they had 5 All-Stars. They had Al Horford, Jeff Teague, Kyle Korver. There's one other guy in there. Or a Paul Millsap. They just had so many All-Stars, and it's because they were overperforming. They were just playing so well, and the wins just kept racking up. And I think that's where the Orlando Magic are this year, where they're just kind of overperforming what people probably expected. They knew that Paolo was probably going to come out hot after a good rookie year. Franz Wagner, obviously a terrific athlete, and then all the plethora of point guards that are kind of just like finding their rhythm finally in the NBA. It's all just kind of clicking on all cylinders for the Orlando Magic. So I do think that's a big part of why Paolo got the nod. But because I still think Cade's better. I'm always gonna vouch for my guy. And that kind of leads us into the question before we wrap up. Ryan, you're starting a franchise, and you got to choose between Paolo or Cade. Be honest. Who are you choosing to start your roster with?
Well, see, the wing is such a hard position to find a good quality player in, especially today. So that's why you could go with Paolo. But again, like I just said, Cade could play 1 through 3. So
he could play 3.
With that being said, I'm going to take Cade. And that's not just because I'm a Pistons fan, but when it all comes down to certain things, like Kevin Durant, if we go back to Cade's rookie year, Kevin Durant could not guard Cade Cunningham. And it's been done time and time again. Countless players in the NBA, some of the league's best, they can't guard Cade. People can guard Paolo Banchero. We saw Jalen Duren most recently guard him pretty darn well on that final shot that should have been called a travel. So with that being said, like, I think there's a lot of players that can guard Paolo. There's not a lot of guys that can guard Cade.
Yeah, I got to go with Cade. I'm riding with my boy. There's plenty of good small forwards I could go with that would play well alongside Cade Cunningham. So there it is. We're picking Cade over Paolo. Yeah, we're a little biased, but hey, we still love our guy Cade. He's very, very talented, and he's going to lead a team in this Pistons team to many wins in the future. That will do it for episode number 19. We will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.